For all your medication and narcotic tracking needs, check out the LogRX app, created by career fire and EMS professionals. That's LogRX.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Flex 7 from TenCate Protective Fabrics. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology. Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatefabrics.com/Flex 7.
In the world of firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. That's why for over 2 decades, first responders nationwide have trusted TheFireStore as their go-to source for essential equipment, apparel, and accessories. Visit TheFireStore.com online or in-store today.
Good evening, and welcome to another edition of everyone's favorite podcast, favorite radio show, where we play none of the hits, but we have great conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another edition of the Larry Conley Radio Show. And as usual, I have the, we'll put pleasure in quotes, of introducing our fearless leader. We're introducing the man whose name is on the moniker. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Deputy Chief of Training in Collinsville, Illinois. It's Larry Conley.
All right. Thank you. No, thank you. No, stop clapping. Stop. Please, you're too kind. Yeah. So, anyway, thank you for the next edition of the show. And I always have fun doing this podcast. We've been doing this probably, almost 12 years now. I guess we were all sound at first. Now we're visual, and it's a little different being visual because you always got to put on your best backgrounds for that and all that good stuff. So anyway, so we're glad to be here once again. David couldn't join us tonight. David's having internet problems down in beautiful downtown Roswell, Georgia. There, so the whole neighborhood went out for some reason. So anyway, he's gonna have a little trouble with that. But we got 2 beautiful ladies on with us tonight, so we're gonna talk 2 things that, and it might be good that David's not here because one thing that's passionate about both the people on tonight is our guests. You'll find out as we get in more into the show, deals with a subject that we're going to keep circling back to, which is the mental health, mental fitness, and that kind of deal. And then, my mom is big with her Replenish Every Step Taken ministry, which talks about rest and mental health and that constant reset that we all have to do. And you especially have to do it more these days because life comes at us so fast. And if you got life coming at you fast in quote unquote a regular job, then imagine how much more management and resilience and replenishing every step you have to do and self-care you have to do when you work in an emergency response environment. So like I said, we're going to continue to have these type of discussions periodically on the show. I know if you joined us, if you're a fan of the show, you joined us a few months back when we had my old crew on and we were talking about dealing with the aftermath of the death of firefighter Ben Polson. And we got a lot of positive feedback from that show. A lot of people said it helped. More and more people felt is more permission now to have those courageous conversations about mental health. It's been the stigma for a long time in the fire service. And we're just trying to, if everyone pulls in the same direction, and whether it's this show or another show you like, or some periodicals you like reading, some books you like reading, delve into it because, we always talk about saving ourselves, but we always kind of think about it from a technical standpoint of, what's the neatest way we can self-rescue if we were trapped in a building. But we never think about the self-rescue if we're trapped in our own mental demise about things. And so I want to continue to help with that. When David and I started first doing G.L.U.E, Growing Leaders Using Empowerment, years ago, we didn't know we were going to actually stumble upon when we do the recharge part of it, of how important really focusing on that mental health part was. And I'm glad we did, because I think we were part of some of the early adapters who thought it was important. Of course, old habits are hard to break. So even though I was a very big supporter and proponent of it, I wasn't always practicing it myself, because, of course, your DNA, as the big bad firefighter says, do the work, get over it, and live to do it another day. And one of the things I used to even tell the new people, hey, don't get all in your feelings about this thing, because you might have a tragedy at 8 a.m. in the morning, but you got to rescue Miss McGillicuddy's baby at 2 in the afternoon. She don't care about what you dealt with that morning.
Yes.
So you got to be up for the next call. However, if you never address it,
Mm.
and then it's going to catch up with you one day, like it started catching me. I ain't gonna say it caught me, but it definitely was on my tail. I mean, I could feel here it comes. And before it consumed me, I wanted to make sure that I was, I don't like things catching me. So, you
Mm.
catch me in a lot of things, but I don't want to be caught on something that's I don't have to be caught on. Some
Yeah.
we all gonna get caught on something, because that's life. But I don't want
Mhm.
to get caught on something preventable, something that can help. And then I'm realizing you get slower and older, you can't run like you used to. So since you can't run like you used to, mainly all you got left is your thoughts. And those thoughts aren't in order, they could destroy you. And you'll be some
Yes.
mean old
Absolutely.
man or mean old woman in the nursing home
Mhm. Mhm.
that's a shell of your one self, and
Mhm.
destroying yourself from the inside out. So anyway, all that being said, we want to continue to have the serious, courageous conversation about mental fitness, mental health. How are we doing it? Years ago, I remember, and I think me and Mom kind of had a slight disagreement about it. And we were in the same, we were saying the same thing, but I think what I was trying to convey is that, yes, I know when we started talking about counseling years ago, it was, yes, you should go to counseling, and yes, but it can't be a one size fit all type of counseling. Um, there are different things. Like I'm not trying to make fun of anybody who works any other job. You get up and go to work every day. I got much respect, no matter what kind of job you do. It doesn't have to be as heroic as emergency service workers. But for some reason, you work at a fast food restaurant, and you need help, you should go see somebody about that. And if they have somebody who specializes in what you do in that industry, that's the bullseye of it. So the same thing with emergency services. What I had said before is that I don't know if we can just totally get the fullness of what we need from just a kind of a general practitioner of mental health, psychiatry, psychology, or whatever. We need a more definite bullseye approach to it. I think sometime in some instances, you could get hit with a shotgun, and the shotgun is going to
Mhm.
may or may not hit the target. But if you got a sniper is going to go for the kill shot. And in a lot of these instances where we need help, we need that kill shot. We don't really need a general like, okay, just take these pills and say a few things in the affirmations in the mirror in the morning, and you'll be okay. If you see a decapitated head rolling down the highway, it'll be okay. Just say some positive affirmations when you get back to the firehouse. See you next week. So it's probably not going to be the bullseye. So to my to I don't know what you want to call it, won't sound creepy, but to my amazement, that's a good word. To my amazement, so I worked for St. Louis City for 30 years, then retired going on 3 years ago. Wow, that's creepy how fast time flies.
Mhm.
Anyway, and became the deputy fire chief for training and safety in Collinsville. Well, one of the initiatives, we have visionary fire chief John Balo, who was also serious about us addressing the mental health issues of our workers, of our family in Collinsville. and he was able to connect with our guest tonight, Kelsey Perkins, and Kelsey's going to wow you with everything she knows about this stuff, which is pretty amazing when you get to talking to her. But she was the first one that I was inspired to go really talk to. Not because let me be honest. I can't lie to the therapist, so I'm not going to try to BS the therapist. The therapist is on tonight, so she'll be like inboxing me like, Larry, that's a lie. So let me be frank. I'm normally Larry, but today right now I'll be frank. But uh, but but um, initially, if you want to be honest, I felt like if we're going to try to market this to the good people of Collinsville, then if I needed to lead the charge in it, um, I needed to lead the charge. And since I felt like that was the responsible thing to do as the person who is saying you all should go get help. And instead of sitting in the office or sitting out on the apparatus floor and say, you go get help because we set this up for you. And since it's under my purview of things to manage, you go get help. Just seemed like I was just being a hypocrite. And in feeling that way, it just didn't feel good for the long haul. And I tried to get away with it as long as I could, but after a while, it's just like, and especially who had somebody who had just been through some recent traumatic things with my crew, and my old crew is still looking at me like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, yeah, I'm looking into a few things. I've talked to a few people. I've interviewed a few people, but haven't really pulled the trigger. But you guys, you're still there in the firehouse. You need to do it. And I kept finding myself on this island of pointing out what people should be doing instead of leading the charge. So with that being said, that led me to going to my first session. And not to mention, there's some time off benefits to it. So I was like,
Oh my goodness.
why not? So
I did
anyway,
the best I could.
right, so
But
I
you
was
should know that
so
concept.
hey, I told you I'm being honest. I didn't put them incentives out there for
Mhm.
nothing. I'm being
Yeah.
honest. I
Mhm.
would love to get on and say mental health has always been something I wanted to champion. And I felt some simpatico with Kelsey when she first presented. And since then, it's been an inseparable partnership of healing and love and understanding between my counselor and the fire service. Bravo. Next show. No, that's BS. I'm not going to, so, and like I said, Kelsey will recognize it. On our next session, she's gonna be like, Larry, you lied to the people. So I'm just being as transparent as I can about the whole thing. So
Mhm.
I said, let me go. And when I went, I was, I ain't gonna say it's super impressive the first time because it's what you think. You go, you sit on the couch and you talk, and basically the counselor sits there with the paper. Well, they don't really have paper anymore, they got computers. Yeah. What do you think about that? Well, and so you feel like, okay, I did. But then we start getting deeper and we start asking more defined questions. And then we start talking about another procedure that Kelsey is going to touch on tonight, which really helped with making some strides in healing. So it's still an ongoing process. I still go, even though some of the meat of the introductory session is over. I still go because I think it's beneficial. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. Uncle Larry is out there, put myself out there, being vulnerable, which is something I don't normally do because my mom here taught us don't be as a single mom. She's like, you ain't got time to be vulnerable. We gotta survive in the hood. We got stuff to do. We gotta go out and kill for our food. So get over it and go to school and get good grades or get a whooping. So that was the major thing. But no, but seriously, as we continue to go down this path, I just want to do my part to not only do it, but share my experiences and then encourage other emergency service workers to get the help because it does help. And we tackle everything. We what we do. We got the technical side down to science. We in every leadership class imaginable. But we, as a preacher, I once heard say, you can't run from yourself, because wherever you go, there you are. So, and I realized that. So, so it took me almost, by the time this show airs, November 1st will be in the past. And another thing I'll talk to counseling about is I'll be turning 60.
Anybody ask you how you was gonna be?
Yep, I ain't a young.
Mm,
I used to be a young tender, but I ain't a young
mm,
tender no more.
mm, mm.
If you ain't young and tender, you're old and something else. But I ain't,
Yep.
young and tender no more. So
Let's
anyway,
move on.
and
We
that
don't
being,
talk about age.
yeah. So anyway, so Mom, you know what that means, but I won't get into that. But
You
anyway,
see, you're gonna need her help even more so if you start talking about anything like that.
right, yeah. But seriously, so that's another thing.
No,
But
that's
I
good.
feel blessed to
Yeah,
reach this
you are.
age. I've lost a lot of friends, not on just on the fire department, but even before the fire
Mm-hmm.
department. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
friends I grew up in the hood with didn't make it to 30. So to
Mm-hmm.
make it this far, and and not bad looking for this. I thought 60, I was gonna be like, like, but not too shabby if I say so myself. So
Mm-hmm.
still fighting them
Mm-hmm.
off, I
Mm-hmm.
got now a counselor is gonna help me know who to fight off, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody ain't good for you. Some people, when they come in and start calling you daddy, you be like, well, I already got kids, so I
Mm-mm.
ain't sharing my money and my pension with nobody. So
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
that's what I ain't gonna do. But
Ooh, I did the best I could.
I'm being honest. This is an honest
Mm-hmm.
show. This is the most honest
Yeah.
show you're gonna get. So,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
anyway, but our guest Kelsey Perkins is on tonight. We're going to get in, and we're not going to be as long-winded as we normally is, because David's not here now. But we're not going to be as
Mm-hmm.
long-winded as normal, because Kelsey has a lot of responsibility. Kelsey is the truth. I'm learning more and more about her, and so it's one thing to have to go to counselor, but it's a nice thing to kind of like your counselor too. So that's a good thing. I mean, she works out. She's a great mom. She even got to get off here because she got to go off soccer. And then before we got on the show, she was working out. So I'm saying it's inspiration. I'm going to step up my game once I finish this master's degree, because I got to finish that first, because I can't add no more to the plate. But
Mm-hmm.
Chelsea is part of a organization called A New Perspectives. She's going to get a little more in detail about that, and also talk about what's unique about their brand of counseling for emergency service workers, and talk about how she's helping out in our region, how she's helping the good people of the Collinsville Fire Department. I've already told you how she's helping me, and we'll get into that a little more. And also I want to get rid of one more stigma that I'm gonna hit in the teeth, even though we might bring it up later. And so it's got to be said, because David and I have talked about in our sessions before about the suicide rate on the fire department and in the fire service, and it's in all emergency services. But since I work in the fire service, I tend to know about those things firsthand right now. And matter of fact, we've had a few on the St. Louis Fire Department that I knew pretty good who ended their lives. Uh, but the stigma, Dave and I were teaching one year, and we were teaching to a predominantly African American, Black audience, and I started talking about the reason we have to recharge is to avoid things like suicide. And one or two people yelled out, "You talking about Black people? Because like we don't commit suicide." I'm like, where's that stat? I mean, I can maybe argue that, if we look up stats big enough, maybe there is more in one culture than the other. I don't know. And I'm not at liberty to say, because I haven't researched enough for this show. But I can say this: being a Black male, being a Black person growing up in North St. Louis and all, and just understanding our culture in a lot of ways, yes, that stigma is even worse for what we think that is dumb to get help. And yes, we do commit suicide. Arguably, do we do it at the same rate? I don't know. That's not even the point I'm trying to make. Because if one person does it, that's too many, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying all that to say is that, so I want to kind of address that as well, because number one, we won't get mental help, and number two, we don't commit suicide. So why do we need mental health? But I'm here as a black man saying that, I don't plan on committing suicide anytime soon, because I like driving my Corvette. And number two, I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm just saying that's nothing I plan on doing. But at the same token, it's not that something that sometimes you might not feel at your end of your rope about stuff. And even though it might not be something I dwell on, I'm not going to lie and say it's not something that kind of walks across my brain sometimes. Like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
You see some tragedy that you dealt with in the street. You hear about all this stuff on the news and stuff like that, and you say, "What's the point? Really? Like, what's the point?" And then, because I got friends and loved ones and now healthy perspectives on life, it keeps marching. But I'm not gonna lie and say it doesn't creep in. You just can't let it take root. You can't water it. You can't, do that. But you can only not do that if you have help to help you learn how to, how to deal with that. So hopefully we'll touch on a little bit of that tonight too. But anyway, that's my usual introduction soapbox, and I usually do that because if I get all my talking out the way, I could let the guests just have it. And so Kelsey Perkins is with us tonight, and I'm excited to have her on the show, and a new ally in helping us get the word out about firefighter mental health and prevention. And so anyway, Kelsey, welcome to the show. Thank you. And how's it going?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm so excited about the Healthy Minds program specifically, but responder wellness has been something that we've been trying to get the word out about since 2019 when we started this program. So it's been an amazing ride. If you would have told me that we would be where we're at today with this, I would say, we got a lot of work to do before we can get to where we're at now. But it's been amazing. We've started out with partnership with one local police department, and now we are up to 16 police and fire departments in the Metro East.
Oh, great.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And when Kelsey says the Metro East, because Kelsey, we're worldwide. I mean, there are people in Nairobi going to be watching this show.
Yes.
What is Metro East?
Metro East.
Right. So anyway, so we stay in like kind of a metroplex, if you call it, of the St. Louis, Illinois, because we border each other at the Mississippi River. So even though there's St. Louis, Collinsville is almost kind of a suburb of St. Louis, how they market in sometimes when they're trying to get things in town. But the other thing is that the Metro East is all the counties that are in close proximity to in that area. So when she says Metro East, she means mainly that kind of southern western portion of Illinois that's near the St. Louis, Missouri area.
Absolutely. So my background is in social work. I am a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Illinois. I have my master's and bachelor's in social work, and then have a certified first responder counselor credential, as well as a certified co-parenting specialist credential. So along with the first responder work with families who are experiencing divorce and try and coach parents through the co-parenting process and how they can be better parents and create better outcomes for their kids.
Now, do you find that in doing that, you had that cross pollination of emergency service workers who going through a divorce, who got the issues of their job that maybe help contribute to it, and now you're trying to help them be healthy going forward, even though there's a family split?
The world works in the craziest ways. And so in starting these different certifications, I never thought there would be the crossover that there is. And because divorce is a skyrocketed issue in the first responder world for many different reasons, but because it is, yes, unfortunately, sometimes the two worlds do collide.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I know that on the list of things that can happen to you as emergency service worker, divorce is pretty high on that list, just because of a lot of things. We're a lot of times ill prepared to deal with what we deal with professionally, trying to balance that with home, and then the whole misunderstanding, miscommunication, and lack of grounding that can lead to the erosion of the relationship. So
yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
do you have anything that's that you do that's, as my sister would call, prophylactic counseling, that would help reduce or curb that ultimate separation from happening?
It's a good question.
Yeah. So within our office, there are 7 of us clinicians total. And so everyone specializes in something a little bit different. So we do have 2 therapists in the office that work with couples. So they work with first responder couples as well. And if there's someone that comes in and they're thinking about a divorce, or they're thinking about, hey, maybe we need to figure out how to co-parent because what we're doing currently isn't working, they can come in and meet with one of our counselors to talk about, okay, is this relationship rectifiable? Or if not, is there another avenue we need to explore? And that's okay if there is. We just need to figure out what that looks like. And sometimes it's giving people permission to not be together.
Yeah. Because sometimes people feel guilt in that, don't know how to deal with that guilt. So is that just for married couples, or for like your girlfriend, boyfriend too?
We see it all. We see it all.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's a good idea, because I think the one thing that Dave and I talk about is is one thing that's close to survival is wanting to be heard, and if you not feel like you're being heard, or you just kind of yell, screaming in the wind, that could be really frustrating. And the more you say stuff, and the more it doesn't get heard, can lead to yelling, screaming, violent outbreaks that if only you knew how to communicate with each other, then you probably can reduce those outbursts, especially if you get, like you say, you got children involved, whether you are legally married or not.
Yep, absolutely. And different parenting styles too. We see a lot of times in the first responder world, your shifts sometimes are unpredictable, and sometimes they're 24 hours, 12 hours, call outs, things like that. So you do have a parent that sometimes feels like a single parent, or like their parenting doesn't align with maybe the other person, or they feel like they're doing it themselves. And before you know it, yes, you're living 2 different lives, and there's no communication, because the communication they are having is aggressive, or it's not positive or healthy communication. And so really just trying to figure out how to get them on the same page with communicating. And first responder couples are it's a different world, because you have to take the job into consideration too.
Right. There's a couple in the fire engineering world, which is what we're a part of, Mike and Ann Gagliano. I always mess their name up, but let's just call them Mike. But anyway, but they know what I'm talking about. But they actually have a kind of a couples ministry within the fire service, and they travel around sharing and testifying of how the practices they've had kept them married for all this time, even with Mike being a firefighter in Seattle. And so it's really a good testimony and good presentation. And one of the things, I don't know if I heard them say it or I've heard people say it, but one of the things is that, well, it's twofold here. The firefighter almost needs kind of I'm trying to say it without sounding like a prima donna. You almost need like some kind of special attention and then different things. So, for instance, I've heard several firefighters testify that, or when there are successful couples, one of the things they talk about is how maybe they come home after a shift. The shift could have been very busy, very stressful, up all night, irritable, and then, or the shift could not necessarily been that busy. But when you're at work, you're always on watch. It's like I tell people all the time, I rest at home, but I used to sleep at work. And what I mean by that is that I slept with one eye open because I always know it's a possibility you got to get up. Where at home, you just kind of lean into the rest a little more. So you got this bad rest because of the schedule. You probably got a bad diet because we're getting ready to pig out for dinner because it's the way we break bread. And then your fitness is it may or may not be. So you got so you got all this necessarily these half checked boxes of resilient things that can help with your resiliency. Then you get home and you bring all this luggage and baggage home. When you get home, if you got somebody at home waiting for you with a list, here, uh, I've been dealing with these kids for 28 or 48 hours. It's your turn, and you be like, "Can I take a breather? Breather? I work too. What you talking about? You got to work. I got to work. I got stuff to do. Your job ain't no big, And you get all this back and forth. My job is I don't. And sometimes I don't even know what I'm upset about. I'm just irritable. I'm just whatever. And then this becomes this and then that leads to more dissension and more thing. And then maybe the guy or the female, the lady who's the firefighter, maybe they find like I ain't finna go home right now. I'm wait till they go to work and go to school, and there's an overnight bar. I'm gonna hang out there to get some eggs and some beer before I head home. Because I ain't ready to deal with that stress yet. I want to unwind somewhere else. Well, all of these unhealthy practices can help lead to that break in a relationship. And a lot of what I hear them saying, they try to really focus on that and say to themselves, yeah, because of the nature of the job, maybe we could be a little more empathetic. Tell me, number one, be honest about what you need. And then let's discuss how we can make that happen. And then if those things are met, it can reduce the effects that my job have at home. Do you see stuff like that when you're talking to couples?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like what you said about, having a stressful shift or not having a stressful shift. Regardless, you're coming out of this arena, if you will, hypervigilant as all get out. And so 9 times out of 10, all you need to do is just come home and change clothes and take a shower, get out of your uniform, get out of your clothes from the firehouse. But you don't communicate that because you don't oftentimes know that's what you need. You don't know that you need that transition period. Some people have really short drives from firehouse to home, especially if you have to live within that district. And so there is no transition period from that heightened state of hypervigilance to that, safe place, if you will, that home base.
Right. And tell me about, well, also like, I'm going to say this right quick before I forget. I like the example you used that if you live in a community and you operate, work and shopping, whatever in that community, how that can be a trigger that you don't even realize that happens, but it can once again kind of insidiously add to some type of erosion within you, which can affect not only you but affect the people that you deal with. I like the way you always describe that.
The battlefield effect, I believe you're referring to. And yes, essentially it's, you work where you live, you fight your battles where you live. And so your kids go to schools that you've been to calls on involving other children, or you've gone to grocery stores that you shop there and maybe you've been called there for certain things, or, there may be very triggering events that have happened in your own community, and there is no escaping that because you live there.
Yep. Mom, you was going to say what?
it was quite a while ago. We were having a discussion years ago, and somebody made the comment that the firefighters, first responders, run in where everybody else is running out. And that stuck with me all the time, especially when we start having conversations like this. And to me, I thought that was really powerful. That's a really true statement. And even if you have one of those slow days or slow nights, they're just slow compared to what you're thinking about, something that's not slow. But some of the average people, when you're slow, would be traumatic. And so I always thought that when I heard that, we run in, I thought that was powerful. And so, having said that, knowing that's what's expected of you, if that occasion is required, I would think just knowing that would be somewhat uh, difficult to deal with. And one other thing is, um, if one of your coworkers expires into the scene or some as a result of, that's another thing that the average person does not think that unless somebody's at work and you maybe had a heart attack or something, but it's unusual for your coworker to be expired while you're on the job. Mm. But with first responders, that could happen anytime, at any point. So I'm bringing this up to say too, in addition to the normal stuff that could bother a person, your wife getting on your nerves or your husband getting on your nerves and all of that. Yeah, whatever. But my point is, I'm not trying to downplay it too much, but with that kind of a possibility of just inherent in your job, it seems like to me would be something that the average person would not even think about. So how? Okay, no, I'm kidding. And I was just going to say, so how do you have that in the background of what you do for a living? Then and how do you navigate that in spite of whether it happens or not directly to you? You can be traumatized by it happening to a coworker from another department. I mean, not department, but another, fire service or whatever. So yes, I'm just trying to say that I think sometimes you know, it gets minimized what they have to face as opposed to somebody who's working in an office or something somewhere or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you bring that point up because many of the first responders I see, they will come in and they will talk about things they're experiencing as if there's something wrong with them for experiencing nightmares, flashbacks, depression, anxiety, heightened senses of emotion, or emotional instability. And my response is always, we as society ask you to do some of the most inhumane things and to see some of the most inhumane things I've ever heard of. And so for you to be responding this way and struggling with these things, I'm glad. I'm glad you're struggling because you're human.
Yes.
And we ask you to do things that no humans biologically, should ever have to do and witness.
On a regular basis too. It's not like you went through, most people might go through depending on where you live in the world, might go through some rare traumatic things that they have to have a lifetime to get over. When you go through traumatic things, whether I think here's where we kind of missed the ball with things. We always looking for the big traumatic thing, and sometimes there's those insidious little things that add up, kind of like that death of 1,000 cuts thing, and so that can kill you over time cumulatively if you're not careful, because you're kind of blowing that off. And I used to, for me, since I'm a visual person, I would use the vision that I learned a long time ago. I don't know if men are predisposed to it or just me or whatever, but we tend to compartmentalize things pretty much. I mean, I think guys been doing it forever, fighting wars. They go and they could be a killer machine overseas and then have to come back home and deal. So they left that there, but they came back and dealt with this. But eventually you can only get so, I think in life, maybe we only got so many compartments to fill before they overflow and start spilling over to each other. And then that's when the things go really bad for you mentally. But to that point, I wanted to bring it because Mama Elaine brought up a point that made me think about that, and your response made me say that this is a good segue into talk about the brain thing that like this is it was almost, I felt like the old commercial, like this is your brain on drugs, like okay, this is a normal brain and this is your brain as a first responder, and then tell how, if you could visually, because I know you had the visual image for us, yeah, but yeah, I maybe that's something we could try to add in, edit in, but anyway, but if you could somehow describe, like this is your brain and this is how a normal synapses of things, might not be using the right word, so it's supposed to look, and then this is his first responder, and then why the treatment you all do at the new is more of a bullseye treatment to get this thing, which is a first responder brain, which is not normal, to look like this thing, which is fairly normal.
Yes. So I am trained in a method called EMDR, and EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it is a modality that is backed by the VA, the APA, the WHO, the CDC, all the bigger federal organizations to be used with PTSD. The VA uses this method very frequently because it is so successful among PTSD clients. And essentially, when we think of it as, your brain having file folders, so all the events from the day, theoretically, when you go to sleep at night and you're in the REM sleep state, go in the appropriate file folders in your brain. When you experience a traumatic event, those memories aren't able to go into the appropriate file folders in your brain because you're in the middle of a trauma. You are not able to reprocess and think about what's going on in the moment because you're in your fight, flight, or freeze mode. For you guys, for first responders, it is fight mode. For me, it would likely be freeze, or I'd be running, one of the two. But when you're in that mode, those memories aren't able to go into those appropriate file folders that we talked about. So the first responder brain, if you will, if you picture a gray brain, the first responder brain has red pretty much all over the brain. And not everybody's. It depends on how long you've been on the job, how much complex trauma you've experienced, how much exposure you've had to that, and the frequency. So it really just depends on, maybe someone that's been on the job under 5 years, their brain might not, Chief, look like your brain, where you've been on the job for quite a bit longer. And so you, of course, have more experiences than maybe they do. So the red matter in the brain, it's going to impact you. It impacts you in many different ways. So your sense of safety, hypervigilance, feeling like you have to have, your back against a door or against a wall at all times to be able to survey the room around you just to assess for safety. You may have some emotional dysregulation. So maybe you're not able to empathize or communicate with the loved ones in your life effectively, appropriately, because you just don't have that ability anymore. Repeat exposure will do that. You may turn to drugs, alcohol, pornography, gambling, whatever you can do to get that impulse control switch is kind of dimmed. So you turn to those things because you don't have the ability to control your impulses as much as maybe you did before.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we fix that? How do we minimize those behaviors and those symptoms? We use EMDR. And the basis for EMDR is we do a bilateral stimulation. So usually it's in the form of a light. So a light that goes from left to right, back and forth. We have an audio version that has a beep that goes from your left ear to your right ear, or we have a handheld, like a vibration model that sends a vibration from your left hand to your right hand. And what we're trying to do is mimic REM sleep. So as we're talking about the specific memory or the specific trauma that we're targeting, we are having you hold those handhelds or look at that light and reprocess that memory, giving it the space in your brain, the space in that session to be able to do that, so that we can put that back where it goes. So then you are able to, go to a call that resembles maybe one that was very traumatic, and you're able to function on that call, and then you're able to function afterwards. It's kind of like you have a plate. And so at some point your plate gets so full because you haven't already worked on what's on that plate, things are going to start sliding off. And so once things start sliding off, that's when we really start to see a lot of these problems, a lot of these issues internally within families, within relationships, within ability to function at work, and things like that. So it usually takes about 8 to 12 sessions, I would say. I don't like to put a number on those things because everyone has experiences that are very different. Some people come in and they have trauma from childhood. So before we can work on the trauma that's happening present moment, we have to work on the trauma that happened, from earliest memory of that trauma happening. So we have a timeline that we work on that's based on age, so that we can determine, what happened first, and then we can work up to present day.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's first heard about it, I said, kind of quack, kind of quackery, rackery stuff is this, man. So, but I say, hey, once again, the can't promote it if you're not, believing in it, and believing in it a lot of times is doing it. But so it was something that I experienced. I don't know if I'm messing up my own HIPAA law saying it, but I did it. Follow the light. I went into the light, and Kelsey led me into the light. But I can say that we the reason what sold me on doing this is Kelsey brought up a good point when she was kind of doing orientation of this whole program, was that we, in our interpretation, think we have coped with something, or think because it's not happening right now, it doesn't still have the effects. But since the brain isn't, or your system is not designed that way, you could think that all you want. However, that does not mean it's not happening.
Right.
So it happening, and the byproduct and the ill effects and all the negative things that come after it is still happening. And if you don't deal with it, then you're really doing yourself a disservice, in healing. So that's what led me to say, well, maybe it's something to look into here, with that whole process, because, I want to think I'm okay because it's a good thing to believe I'm okay, and but that doesn't mean that you are okay. And if you look into somebody's brain, you say, ooh, that's a lot of red matter in your brain. Be like, I don't have red matter in your brain. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes, you do. So we want to be careful about that. My mother always says that if you were to break your leg, you immediately go to the doctor to get that leg fixed. Now, I used to add a little something to it. I said, and you cannot go to the doctor and get it fixed. And guess what? Eventually it's going to stop hurting. but it's not going to be very functional. It's not going to function to its purpose. It's going to be very limited because your leg, if it heals broken, then you're going to be walking funny for the rest of your life because it wasn't healed. Part of going to the doctor is not only stopping the pain, but fixing it, whether it's screws or surgery, whatever you have to do, fixing it in a way that can get you back to normal. Hence, when we talk about mental health, since we don't see a broken leg, even though it's a broken brain, and we tend to can hide it and conceal and put a mask over it, if it heals funny, we're not going to be as right as we can be. And when you do the job that we do, you have to be on all cylinders because you do not know. When I had knee surgery, they used to make me do these strange exercises. And I said, why do we do this? And his question, why do we do this? He said, you're prepared for the steps that you know you're going to take. I'm preparing you for the steps you don't know you're going to take. I'm like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Well, like if a car is coming after you,
It's a good,
you got to make a move. You don't say, okay, I'm going to place my leg over there, and then no, the reflex has to be in. But you can make the reflex move, but if your leg is not prepared to handle that reflex move, you're probably going to get hit by the car because you can't move fast enough because you're not prepared for what you don't. So once again, I keep tracing it back to this whole trying to draw the parallel between what we see physically and what we don't see physically. The parallel is still the same. What you don't repair becomes the handicap, so to speak, for you the rest of your life. Does that make sense? So if I'm doing some pseudo psychology here that really don't make sense, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it definitely makes sense. And Chief, you and I have talked about this at length, but first responders, depending on the generation in which you came up in that world, you're up against a stigma as well.
yes. That's what I was getting ready to say.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a part of my keynote speech. I did the keynote for FDIC 2021, and when we talked about, especially when we got to the recharge and advocating for yourself and getting help and things of that sort, we addressed the stigma. There's nothing wrong with advocating for yourself, and we advocate for ourselves in all different ways, but we won't do that. And let me say this. I don't want to put it all on like all of a sudden now, I'm aware, so I'm sharing it with everybody. Everybody should be aware. Let me say this. It was a partnership of crazy. We felt I don't want to put my business out there in the street because I don't want somebody to think that I ain't got all my marbles. But number two, and maybe even number one, a lot of agencies had that culture. And not just the people you work in the firehouse with. A lot of agencies had that kind of culture in the administration, in the decision makers. So if you let them know that I might need a little help or I'm not seeing things, they might start putting you on that watch list of you may not have your job because we don't need that type of people on our job. So it was a twofold thing. It wasn't exclusively I just don't want to tell my crew. It was like I don't want to tell my agency because my agency is going to be ready to put me out the pasture, because I'm feeling this way. Have you seen that some improvement in that, Kelsey?
Absolutely. There's been light years of improvement. And I think that's evidenced by the number of agencies that we have been able to partner with. And the horror stories that I have heard first responders coming in and saying, because normally I will ask them just as a standard question, what took you so long? By the time first responders, I always say they're the best clients because by the time they come in, they're ready to work. They should have been there 5-10 years ago.
Right.
They're like, hey, come on, I'll do whatever is going to help, my situation. So they really are the best, most motivated clients. And I always ask that question, why did it take you so long to get here? Why are we at this point? And it's always usually, well, I didn't know that I could,
Right.
or I didn't want to lose my job, or I didn't want anyone to think that I couldn't, hold a gun or have a badge or fight a fire. And, or I just didn't know where to go, or I had a really, really awful experience with
Right.
Dr. John Smith or whoever down the street that said they've worked with trauma and things that I'm experiencing. And maybe they have, but the first responder world is so completely different when you're talking about working with them on a therapeutic level, that if you're not aware of that culture and just what's different about it, you can really do a lot more harm than good, which kind of leads me to how the Healthy Minds program even became a program and was brought to life in 2019. At that point in time, a local police department had reached out to myself and a colleague and said, hey, we're having a really hard time finding appropriate referrals for our people for counseling. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, let's sit down, let's talk about it. Maybe we can provide some resources. Let's put our heads together and figure out what exactly it is that you're looking for. And they had sent someone after a critical incident to a therapist that was not culturally competent and said some things that really put that person in a bad place. And so they did not want to utilize that individual any further and wanted to really put their due diligence in and find providers that they could trust in working with their people and really being sound and aware of what they see every day, because it is such a different world and most people don't understand just what it is we ask first responders to do.
No, good point. Go ahead, Bon.
Okay, I was thinking about the contrast between mental and physical. So in your life, you might probably, if you become an adult, have seen someone who's broken their arm or, broke a leg or, had some kind of physical ailment or had a physical ailment that was sort of, you know about people that maybe had some kind of internal injury of one of their organs or something like that. But when you see all of this stuff and that the first responders have to see and then deal with, that's a whole, because the, well, a lot of people, I won't say the average person, but a lot of people have never really dealt with anything that would mess with their mental health. And so they just like you talked about the broken leg. Well, even if I have never broken my leg, I have some idea of what that might be like and what the remedy might, how to go to the doctor. I'm going to the doctor. Very few people would keep trying to walk around with a broken leg. But when it comes to the mental, that's not the game changes. So now I can see all of this horrible stuff. I can have already had some horrible stuff happen to me when I go get this job. And that didn't get dealt with because I ain't no, give me what you ain't, you know what I'm saying? And so because I ain't none of that, I don't need to do that. So now I'm seeing traumatic things happening face to face, right in my face. And even if you was a coworker and you found out about them having had something, a traumatic experience, they saw a burned kid or something, or whatever, or their coworker. So now this is out of the quote unquote ordinary, in a sense, even though it's part of your job, but it's still not typical, right? So that alone, I mean, because in your growing up and in your being an adult, how many that it's before they go to be a firefighter or a first responder has seen any of this stuff before or had to deal with it any kind of way. So the tendency would be to try to put it out of your mind. if you survived it physically. You know what I'm saying? So and so where in your lifespan do you even talk about mental health or mental illness or anything like that, and what can trigger something? And so I always thought when he got in the fire department, and I found out that a lot of them didn't even have anything to, pre- um, I want to say preventive. I don't want to say that. Something prophylactically or something you might encounter, and if you do, what would be the thing you should do about it? Because it happens to me. I'm saying that, like I'm a firefighter. It happened to me, but it never happened to me before I became a firefighter. So now this is something new and more, and you might even heard some stories, but the stories were not like what I'm witnessing or whatever, because now it's personal to me, or even maybe happened to one of your coworkers. But my point I'm trying to make is it's different when it's something that's been commonly something that you might have heard of, seen before, witnessed, had broke your leg. You know what I'm saying? Well, and I'm not trying to minimize breaking a leg, but it's certainly a whole lot different from seeing some things first responders have to see. You know? and then go back to the place you're where you work, and everything is back to normal. You want soda or you want some ice cream. You know what I'm saying? And you never really face to face just deal with this, and you've just seen something that the average person would probably make them, you know, pass out or something like that. So I guess I'm describing what I'm talking about, but I'm wondering, how do you make that um, be something that this is different from what other kind of injury or whatever you may have had, what skinned your knee when you were a kid. This is a altogether different class of injury.
Mhm. I like to do a lot of psychoeducation whenever
Hmm.
I first meet with a first responder, just depending on
Okay.
where they're at with understanding the brain and how the
Mhm.
brain reacts to traumatic situations, because,
Okay.
you know, they may go home and they may hear, well, there's something wrong with you, or this is not normal and your
Mhm.
behavior is not normal and you're the problem. And
Okay.
okay, maybe some of your choices are not great, and maybe some of your choices are creating problems within your family dynamic or within your marriage.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
let's go one step further than that, and let's talk about why you're having that behavior and why you're making those choices. Well, it's
Okay.
because your brain is overloaded, and your repeat exposure to complex trauma is
Mhm.
what's causing that. So,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter, male, female, black, white, what have you, the brain is going to determine how certain situations impact you.
Right.
Mhm.
You may think that you are the biggest, strongest, fastest police
Mhm.
officer or firefighter or EMT, medic, ER doctor.
Mhm.
Your brain's maybe going to tell you something different.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
it's kind of out of your control in a sense. And I find that can be very powerful in,
Mhm.
kind of figuring out what that path looks like to treatment. And
Mhm.
so, maybe historically, depending on the culture or the generation that the responder grew up in, and
Mhm.
what was okay and acceptable to ask for, then might be different now once they realize, hey, this isn't something I necessarily have control over. Yes, it's not appropriate for me to go gamble away all of our, money for bills, or it's
Yeah.
not okay for me to go have an affair, on my spouse.
Mhm.
Not a good choice, but let's talk about why you're making those choices.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now that's powerful. And if like I said, if you know better, you do better. So if you know better as far as, okay, these are some insidious reasons why I may feel this way, maybe learning through counseling, you can learn how to um, have tools to cope with it, so you don't make these choices that continue to lead you down a path of destruction. It becomes this vicious cycle. I went through the unchecked trauma. The unchecked trauma is leads me to the bad decision. The bad decision leads me to the destruction of things around me, family or whatever. And then I keep down this road. And what if you lean to? A lot of times it's the things that will seek itself out. If you got kind of tendencies for alcoholism, you're going to probably drink more. You got a tendency for drug use, you're going to be trying to get away with that. You got, like I said, tendency to manage your relationship bad. You're going to, do things to destroy that. And then you find yourself at rock bottom. And like I said, these things may eventually lead to, unfortunately, some of these ultimate decisions that people make, with their lives. And then so I'm glad that we are getting more and more to these type of conversations, and leaning more towards solutions, and not so much just to tell people, aha, I gave you the tools, so stop messing up. The human experience is too dynamic for that. I mean, Kelsey she knows all this stuff. She has a ton of education, and I'm sure she's perfect in all her dynamics of life. However,
Whatever.
Ooh, I wouldn't go there.
I'm sure. No, but my point is that with all of us, we may know all this stuff, but we still have to check in with ourselves and take. Because I heard some years ago that people, clinicians like yourself, you're required to go get treatment, on a regular basis,
Yes.
because you're taking in everybody's stuff. You're kind of an empath for people's stuff. How do you process that? So you got to take in counseling to recharge yourself to be ready for more stuff to take in. So in a sense, you run into people's brain where people are running out of, so it's not physical, but the mental part of it still just is exhausting, so to speak.
And there are times where I'm certainly not perfect at all. I find myself sometimes wanting probably people to be further along in their treatment and their process than
I'm sitting here, Kelsey. You don't have to go on my business.
yeah. Or, there are times where, maybe somebody hasn't reached their level of readiness yet. And so maybe it's, they're coming in, as Chief said, there's a time off incentive for them to come in and utilize the program, which that was a big component that I advocated for in the very beginning, because it's easy for somebody to come in for 1 or 2 sessions and to say, oh, yep, great, I'm healed, but by the time they come for 4, which is the design amount is 4 sessions, normally by then we've built enough rapport and there's been enough psychoeducation for them to say, okay, I'll bite,
Right.
Or if they're not in that stage of readiness, they haven't reached a point where, hey, maybe they're just newly on the job, or maybe they just haven't reached what their rock bottom is yet in terms of their complex trauma and their mental health. I see it as a win, because then they know where to go when and if, those alarm bells do start to go off.
Yeah, good point. Well, we're going to start wrapping this up because I know Kelsey got stuff to do. And so I appreciate the time that you came on and talked to us. It was very valuable. And I want it to be a continued conversation. I want it to be the last time
We
we
need to have
have you on,
2, 3,
because,
and 4. Yes.
yeah. It's just like counseling. We need at least do 4 sessions, and then you don't have to listen to the program for 12 hours. So,
Yeah. Well, and then you have to have maintenance,
Right.
on that. Yeah.
So hopefully,
Maintenance.
so hopefully I can maybe next time I can have my old crew back, because I told them, I promised them I was going to bring them back, and we was going to maybe have another joint session again. When I was at FDIC last year, the Fire Department's Instructors Conference, I had several people. I was surprised. I had several people walk up to me and say, "Hey, I heard the show where you had your old crew on discussing," and man, that was very powerful. It really touched me. Our whole crew listened to it, and I was like, well, that made me feel good, because it felt like we were reaching people and not just talking on the podcast and just having a good time. But I do want to continue the conversation, and I want to kind of as I continue to grow in it and get better and get more healed, and continue to find other ways to testify about my growth as well, because it's nothing like putting yourself out there. And if you're any kind of leader, you got to sometimes take one early, be an early adapter for the team before everybody else catches up. And let me get this right. I'm not doing anything to check a box or try to be the example, whatever like that. Those are parts of it, but it's not the reason. Going, no, my mother and my brother have been hounding me, especially since Ben's death, about do something, and also, yeah, yeah, and then but it was probably some stuff before then I should have. When you go through, I've been through 2 divorces, and tons of other stuff, and I'm gonna kind of wrap up my point by saying this. There's a one of my favorite people in the business is a fire chief down in the Colony, Texas, which is Scott Thompson, and Scott is just no pulls, no punches in his conversation. That's why I love talking to him, and I love hearing him speak. He did the keynote speech a year ago at FDIC, but Scott says this. I don't know how this fits into the psychology of things, but I thought it was a good, honest way to let people know what you're getting yourself into, and then maybe they could start early and don't have to wait till they get mentally beat down to now come. Because somebody said a long time ago, I heard them say, don't come to, I mean, yes, come to us anytime, but try to minimize coming to us when you at your rock bottom and we need to dig you out. Why don't you try to come to us proactively so we minimize you getting to rock bottom? And that's the best use of mental health program. But Scott said what he likes to do, and he likes to see his people do, is that they see Kelsey, a brand new firefighter, walking up and got her gear, and I can't wait for my first day. And I walk out and say, "You Kelsey, right?" He said, "Yeah, your first day, yeah." And I bring you a cup of coffee. You drink coffee? Sure. Before we go in there, let me explain. And I can't put it as eloquent as Scott, but in essence, he kind of says this: you're about to go into a job that can literally kill you. You're gonna be up late nights. You're going to have mental issues. You probably, if you're married, you might risk your relationship. You may be somewhat distanced from your kids. You're going to find times of isolation, frustration, uncomfortableness, blah, blah, blah. And he just goes down the line of all this stuff you're going to have to deal with, because this is the sacrifice you mentally and physically make to do this job effectively. If you're ready, let's take our cup of coffee inside and begin this career. And I just thought that, as harsh as that sounds, because a lot of times people don't find that out till after they watch Chicago Fire and all this other stuff, and look, wow, right, right, all these sexy people in the firehouse. It's just sexy ways to rescue people and all that, but they don't see the after effects of all of that. So it's Hollywood. I know the guy who does the technical advisory for Chicago Fire. It's Hollywood. You get in the image, but the real is what we really have to deal with. So I just think, do you think that's a bad way to start somebody off on a career psychologically? Let them know that up front.
No, I think that's fantastic. And I think the more proactive we can be about those hard conversations, the easier it will be to remedy when those people are struggling, because the struggle will happen. It's just a matter of
when. Yeah, exactly. It's not it's when. And I'm gonna tell you this in a weird kind of way. You feel funny if it never happens. Nobody listens. I'll tell you one thing. When people say, you want to transfer for the 13s, you're getting old. It's a busy company. I said, no, I want to stay there because I need some street cred when I go talk to people. Because the one thing firefighter is gonna say, all this stuff you're telling us is cute, but where do you work? And you say, I ain't fought a fire since 83. 1983 or 18. Nobody want to hear you talk. They want to hear what did you go through. So my point is, even though I'm not in the streets and no more at one of the busiest firehouses in St. Louis, maybe my new busy house is getting this house together. And then now people listen to, Yeah, I went through that. I survived that, but now I'm trying to fix some of it so I can heal some things in my life. And maybe that's the next busy firehouse I need to be in is the mental firehouse. You know, you like
I think there's a reason why you're in the position that you're in now, because you are able to be in the business of being well and focusing on that.
Mhm. Well, let me do this. I'm a Mommy Elaine. You got 30 seconds to say your parting words and
I'm gonna take more than that because you took up all of my time talking all about, you know, drinking coffee and stuff. So
mhm.
anyway,
Anyway. But
I'm
anyway,
just
I'm
kidding.
trying to help
I'm
with.
just kidding.
And then Kelsey,
Yeah,
we'll have you say a few words, and I'll wrap it up.
yeah. Well, one of the things I think that I always thought is he's been in the fire service is how much um, you don't deal with how I was when I came on to the job. Um, it seemed that way to me that a lot of people weren't prepared for certain things to happen, and and because I don't know why that would be, but it just I guess just the way it was traditionally or whatever. But I'm glad to see now it looks like it's a little bit more attention being paid to you. What trauma have I had before I got to be a firefighter? You know what I'm saying? Or what was my life like then versus now? And how do you guard your heart and guard your mind? And in the when you're at work and when you're not at work, because you can get called in depending on what's going on. They had a terrible fire years ago, and they were calling in, people that were off work, and so now you had to respond to that because you are a first responder. So I'm just, but it seems like to me, having worked in the medical field for quite a few years, um, the mental is always sort of low on the totem pole of things that we want to prophylactically address. Not once you've been stressed and once you've seen something so horrible you can't hardly imagine, seeing it again and all these kinds of things, as opposed to taking a physical. You got to have a good physical because if they find out you got any kind of physical condition, that's going to minimize your opportunity to even get the job. But what I always thought was the mental and emotional is just as needed to be examined or whatever, however that would look, to see if you're even mentally fit for this job, let alone physically fit. So, and so that kind of thing. So but it's growing, it's getting better, and but I think it's still got some work to do dealing with how you recognize symptoms and what's going on in my house. I know it's none of your business, but if it's affecting your job, it is now something you need to address.
right, Kelsey.
Yeah. So when I meet with a first responder for the first time, I typically tell them something along the lines of, I'm not necessarily concerned about your performance on the job or at work, because you do the work that you do because you're born to do it. And typically responders are pretty good at their jobs and they can function there and they're the top dog there. I'm more concerned and focused on life for you outside of the firehouse or outside of the police station. I want to help you be the best father, the best mother, the best sibling, the best partner, whatever you identify with and whatever is important to you. I want you to be your best self outside of the job because you deserve that. You give so much
That's
of
good.
yourself to your community and to
Mhm.
others around you on their worst day. And
Mhm.
again, I can't reinforce enough seeing some of the most and going through some of the most inhumane situations that we ask
Mhm.
people to do. And so I'm honored to be able to be a part of a system in which, we do provide that support and we do provide that trauma-based support so that you can function at your best capacity outside of the firehouse and outside of the police station, because that's where my concern lies.
Yeah, good deal. um, yeah, I just want to say this in closing, that one of the reasons Dave and I started the whole Growing Leaders Using Empowerment workshop and the G.L.U.E world is we want to really address personal leadership. We went through a ton of leadership. I've been through a ton of leadership classes, courses over my years, and being a firefighter even before then. And everyone, not everyone, but a lot of them were possessed these different techniques to lead and manipulate people into doing what you wanted them and all that. But very seldom they had classes that had you totally look in the mirror and then work from the inside out. And so that's what we wanted to address. How do we work for the inside out? Because when you really truly work from the inside out and do the methodology of doing that successfully, you can't help but be attractive. And when I mean attractive, I mean just on how you look, but on what you attract, how you attract your sense of you walk in a room, if you're really attractive, people just want to talk to you, get to know you, see what's up. They see you performing at the job. They want to know how you successful, or how do you seem to always win. And there's a lot of it's built on your foundational core of how well you did that personal leadership. What we stumbled upon is that the mental part of that is critical in helping build that foundation. And that's why I'm excited to continue this type of conversation going forward, because it does tie into what we do. Me now doing it more proactively with the program continues to help me be a better person to testify in that, and not just talk about it in theory. No one wants to hear me talk about fighting fires in theory. They want to know, what did I actually do? And I have to take that same mentality with this. Nobody wants to hear about how good going to see a counselor is, or you doing it. And so, and I'm proud to say I am. I want to continue to do it. So it wasn't something I just got the 12 hours for. It's actually part of my mental foundational continue building my mental foundation. But we'll be on again, Kelsey. Like I said, I want to thank you for coming out, and I'll see you in the future when I come do my counseling. And we won't talk about what we talk about counseling. It could hurt some feelings of some of the viewers. So be careful.
Secret's safe with
Yeah,
me.
yeah, right. But my secret's safe with Kelsey, because that's how it's supposed to be. Or I'll sue you. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah.
But seriously, now where if you got a Kelsey in your area, if you guys now real quick, what you do, is it different places around the country that that do similar things to what you do here?
Yes, there are different certified first responder counselors nationwide. So I would be happy to get you that information.
Okay.
If there's anyone that needs resources or recommendations, I would be happy to provide that if you are local. So if you are in the St. Louis Metro East area, there are 5 certified first responder counselors in the Metro East, south of Champaign.
Okay.
So there's an office in Alton, an office in Swansea, and our office in Maryville. And so we can point you in the right direction if you need a resource.
Okay. Well, we appreciate it, and thanks for hanging out with us tonight on the Larry Conley Radio Show. We'll be back in 7 weeks for another great show, another great guest. It's probably going to be close to the holidays then, kids, and I'm not going to be. I'll be happy for the holidays, but Uncle Larry's a tropical brother. I won't be happy with the weather, but we'll get through it. We'll get through it. Yeah, exactly. So I'm start doing this show at the beach somewhere, So, hey, good morning from the Bahamas, So, but yeah, so come check us out. See what we're doing at www.gluenationldc.com to check us out. Where David and I in the world, we got a couple of dates coming up. We'll let you know when those are, when we'll be speaking, and I don't know. Happy Scorpio season.
All right now,
Your
Scorpio.
boy, your mom Elaine here, and Uncle Larry, both Scorpios.
It's Scorpio,
That's why we've been bumping heads since I was born.
yeah, and
You
you've
don't
been
want to,
getting
you
a
don't want,
headache.
right, exactly. That's a brick wall, ladies and gentlemen. So anyway, but thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Larry Conley Radio Show. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, and good night.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
For all your medication and narcotic tracking needs, check out the LogRX app, created by career fire and EMS professionals. That's LogRX.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Flex 7 from TenCate Protective Fabrics. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology. Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatefabrics.com/Flex 7.
In the world of firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. That's why for over 2 decades, first responders nationwide have trusted the TheFireStore as their go-to source for essential equipment, apparel, and accessories. Visit thefirestore.com online or in